Writing for The Guardian on the first anniversary of October 7th, Naomi Klein asks, and I quote, "What's the line between commemorating trauma and cynically exploiting it?" Her question elicits an inevitable conclusion in which she accuses Israelis of, quote, weaponizing their trauma to justify their, and this is from the charter too, imperial aggression and grotesque human rights violations. Now it's interesting because had Klein instead considered Hamas's imperialistic calls for a caliphate, had she considered the murder of Jews, had she considered Hamas's cynical use of Palestinian civilians whose death itself describes as, quote, necessary sacrifices that provide leverage over Israel, she may have reached a different conclusion. Perhaps Klein would have noted the unprecedented efforts taken by Israel to protect civilians and that peace is an anathema to Hamas. Or perhaps she would have discovered that Israelis are a people no less deserving of solace and sovereignty than any other people. Yet in having foreclosed these possibilities, Klein so indulged the normalization of anti-Semitism and the sexual abuse that is so central to it, that she imagines, and I quote, as it gets worse, so many prominent Jewish leaders want, and that was italicized in her article, so many Jewish leaders want Israel to have suffered a modern day Holocaust.
In the end, a kind of rejection of agency in favor of structure almost inevitably becomes a conspiracy fantasy of one kind or another. And conspiracy fantasy is not necessarily or inherently anti-Semitic. It's just that anti-Semitism has such a lovely product to sell to people who are attracted by conspiracy fantasy, because it has this product which is the face of the unseen and evil power that stands in the way between us and progress, us and utopia. And it turns out that conspiracy fantasy is always open to being sold anti-Semitism, for the reasons that I've gone through a little bit already. And then it leaves one more question. I'm going to stop because I could talk all day. But the one more question is again about to bring back the idea of agency. So Nuremberg has his 3,000-year history of anti-Semitism, and he's very compelling, and he kind of says this is the history of mankind. And anti-Semitism, every time you cut off a head, it raises a new head and it mutates. And anti-Semitism is a fact, is a timeless, ahistoric fact of human history. But then Hannah Arendt comes along and says, be careful. She says you need to pay close attention to the specificity of every particular anti-Semitic movement, and not only of the ways in which it is like the ones before, and it recreates some of the images and some of the feelings, but you also need to think of what people are doing in this moment, why they are embracing anti-Semitism, and what they are gaining out of it. And the problem we have is that the anti-Semites, I think, obviously, do not know that they are anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitism has been from the very beginning a project of delegitimation. We saw it. I said a few words about it. It remained the same all the way. Now, what is delegitimation? This is a word we use often. I think we rarely try to understand the full meaning of the word. And what the meaning of the word, the full meaning of the word is that delegitimation is potentially and sometimes explicitly license to kill. Norman Cohen wrote a book, Warrant of Genocide, and a Jewish French historian, Jules Isaac, wrote another book on the same and goes to a very long history in which this want to kill or license to kill or the potential of killing has been growing inside Christianity and Europe, and arrived today to the discourse around and about Israel. And I think this is what it is about, a license to kill. This is a happy note, maybe I shall... Thank you.
Anti-Zionism, this fanatical anti-Zionism, is the modern form of anti-Semitism. And we show that in the film. We sort of walk you through this evolution pretty quickly of how anti-Semitism has mutated over the generations. And what we're seeing now is this extreme anti-Zionism. And I think for a lot of people, certainly around the world, but also within the Jewish community, there's been questions about, what anti-Semitism is, and it's controversial, right? Like, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, but we're saying it is. I really sort of am planting my flag, making it is. When the Starbucks cafes in New York, around the country, around the world, are being vandalized, it's not about the Bibi government. It's not about what's happening in Gaza. This is about attacking Jews. When 2 people are killed and shot to death in front of the American Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., and the man screaming "Free Palestine," it's not about the Israeli government. He went looking and hunting Jews. So we're really clear on what that is, and I think it's really important that we understand that. And to me, one of the most important scenes in the film is when Tessa Wexler is holding up the sign in front of the Multicultural Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and it says, "No Zionists Allowed." And I want everyone to know and everyone to walk away after seeing this film, and every non-Jewish person, to understand when they see "no Zionist allowed," that means no Jew allowed. Full stop. There is no light between that anymore.